I probably would have just walked away and moved on with my life without her. But that smirk changed everything. He forced my hand with that smug look, and whether she noticed it or not, their blatant disrespect cut straight through me. In that moment, it became painfully clear that Emma, my wife of 6 years, wasn't going to be my wife for much longer. One of the biggest problems in our marriage was how much I had been working these past 6 months. I was pushing myself hard, chasing a promotion that would come with a hefty salary increase. That raise meant Emma could finally quit her job, and we could start the family we had always talked about. But there was another problem. Emma was stunning, the kind of woman who could turn heads without even trying. She wasn't the type to outright flirt, but she had this radiant smile that could easily be misinterpreted. She has gorgeous face, knockout figure, just taller. Men naturally gravitated toward her. For a while, I had my suspicions. There were too many late nights at the office, too many sudden business trips. But it was his smirk at the company holiday party that sealed it for me. That was the smoking gun. I had practically begged Emma to bring me to the event, and now I understood why she was so reluctant. Respect has always been a big deal in my family. Oh, by the way, my name's David Simmons. If you've got a few minutes, let me give you a quick story from my past to explain where I'm coming from. Back in high school, I was the star shortstop for our varsity baseball team. Early in the season, we went up against the one team that had a real shot at stopping us from winning the conference championship. Their pitcher threw a fastball straight at my head. It missed my face, but slammed into my helmet. As I got up and jogged toward first base, I glanced over at the pitcher. He was smirking. Then he mouthed the word pussy. I saw red. I charged the mound and caught him completely off guard. Unlike those fake baseball fights where guys just shove each other, I landed a clean right hook straight to his nose, breaking it and sending blood splattering all over his crisp white uniform. Chaos erupted. I got suspended and had to face a hearing to determine if I'd be kicked off the team permanently. My coach was pissed, but my old man? He backed me up the whole way. When he picked me up, he just shook his head and said, "I saw what that punk did. You can't let people walk all over you, son. The second they know they have your balls, it's all downhill from there." My coach, though, he had a different perspective. The next day, I went to his office, hoping to explain myself. Instead, he sat me down and gave me a speech I never forgot. Until now. "David, what do you care what some lowlife says to you? You know where I grew up? Down on 75th Street, where gangbangers were always trying to start something. I was lucky. My parents didn't tolerate fighting, and that kept me on the straight path to college. Now, I live where I want, doing a job I love, while those guys are either dead, in prison, or rotting away in some room with a needle in their arm. So here's the deal. If I let you play for me again, there will be no more fighting, no matter the situation." I ended up serving a 3-game suspension. Someone must have been looking out for me, though, because at my hearing, Ron Mueller, the opposing team's catcher, showed up. Turns out, he was disgusted with his own coach. The guy had actually ordered the pitcher to bean me, hoping I'd retaliate and get banned. Ron didn't want to win a championship that way, and basically saved my ass. Funny enough, Ron later became my college team's catcher, and eventually, the best man at my wedding to Emma. But back to the present. I could have handled it if Emma had at least respected me enough to say, "It's over. I'm leaving." I've been dumped before. Not since college, and never by a woman who once stood in front of 100 of our closest friends and family, vowing to love me forever. But still, I could have taken it like a man. Instead, she chose this path. She chose to screw her coworker, Tom Harris, and then come home to give me leftovers. That's when I felt like one of those cartoon characters, with an angel on one shoulder and a devil on the other. My old coach was whispering in my left ear, "Take the high road, David. Walk away." But my father? He was in my right ear, shouting, "Crush them both, son." It didn't take long, and I didn't need any fancy spy tricks to get the proof I needed. The Monday after their company party, I took the day off work and hired both a divorce lawyer and a private investigator. That same week, Emma called one night to say she had to work late. The ex-cop I hired followed her, and sure enough, she ended up at Tom's townhouse. No photos of them actually screwing, but come on, I wasn't an idiot. They weren't spending 2 hours in his place going over spreadsheets. I was ready by Friday night. That evening, she called me, her voice casual and sweet. "Hey babe, a few of us from the office are grabbing drinks and dinner. Don't wait up, okay? It's been forever since I had a girls' night out." An hour after that call, I drove to the address my investigator had given me, and right there, sitting in Tom's driveway, was Emma's car. I knocked on the door, and to my surprise, Tom answered, standing there in nothing but a bathrobe, wearing that same smug expression. "Don't get any ideas, David. I'm a black belt in karate," he said, like that was supposed to mean something. I let out a short breath, keeping my voice steady. "Relax, Tom. I'm not here to throw punches. She's yours now, and the last thing I need in my life is a lying, cheating wife. Just tell Emma to come to the door so I can hand her these papers." I held up the manila envelope. I called into the house. "Emma, no need to hide. Just come downstairs." A moment later, she appeared at the top of the staircase, wrapped in a robe that matched his. The irony almost made me laugh. Almost. I held out the envelope. "Here are the divorce papers. Get yourself a lawyer and have them contact mine so we can work out the settlement. Don't come home tonight or any time before tomorrow evening. By then, I'll have my things out of the apartment and you can come back." Emma hesitated before reaching for the envelope, as if touching it would burn her. Her voice was small, almost pleading. "David, my parents and my brother's family were supposed to come over for brunch tomorrow. What am I supposed to tell them if I'm not there?" I gave her a cold smile. "Not a problem, Emma. Before I came over here, I emailed your brother and gave him this address. I told him you and Tom would be hosting the family here instead. I assume he'll get the message in time, but if not, I'll explain the change of venue when they show up." Her face crumpled, and I could see the tears welling up. But then my eyes landed on her left hand, and whatever composure I had left shattered. "You didn't even have the decency to take off my grandmother's wedding ring before screwing this guy?" My voice was razor-sharp with anger. "Give it to me. Now." Emma broke down completely, sobbing as she struggled to pull the ring off her finger. She finally handed it over, but I was already turning on my heel, walking away without another word. I wasn't surprised when the doorbell rang the next morning at exactly 11 a.m. Maybe her brother hadn't gotten my email in time. This is going to be awkward, I thought, but when I glanced out the window and saw Emma's entire family standing on the porch, I realized I had no idea just how awkward it would get. "David, we're sorry," her brother said when I opened the door. "I got your email, and I talked to Emma. Can we come in and talk?" For the next hour, her mother, father, and brother did everything they could to convince me to take her back, to reconsider the divorce. Apparently, after I left her at Tom's house, Emma had gone straight to her brother's place, broken down, and confessed everything, begging them for help. She knew I loved her parents, especially since my own folks had retired and moved to Florida. They pleaded with me, talked about counseling, forgiveness, second chances, but I wasn't having it. No amount of guilt or pity was going to change my mind. When they finally left, no one was smiling. It took everything in me not to hug my mother-in-law when she walked out onto the porch, tears streaming down her face. I wanted to tell her it was going to be okay, but it wasn't, and I wasn't about to pretend otherwise. For the next few months, Emma and I did the usual dance. She wanted to talk. I didn't. Her lawyer pushed for counseling. Mine dismissed it as a waste of time. The marriage was irrevocably broken by her choices. A week before the divorce was finalized, Ron invited me over for dinner. He knew more details about the breakup than I did, thanks to his wife, Anna, who still talked to Emma on occasion. I sat in their kitchen, watching Anna cook. She was 7 months pregnant, glowing with that unmistakable radiance of a woman about to be a mother. I must have been staring, lost in thought, because Ron clapped a hand on my shoulder. "Come on, David. Let's grab a beer and talk outside." I stood, but before I followed him, I put an arm around Anna's waist. "He adores you, and don't ever cheat on him." She turned to me, eyes full of warmth. "Why would I do that, David? I love that man, and we're about to have a baby boy. I'm not crazy." I let out a dry laugh. That's what I would have said about Emma a year ago. Look at us now, 6 days from divorce. Anna sighed. "Emma was stupid, David. I'm not that dumb. Ron's not going to try to talk you out of this, is he?" I shrugged. Guess I'll find out. She gave me a knowing look. Go on. Listen to what he has to say. I tell Emma the same thing every time she calls. I'll support you both however I can, but I'm not giving either of you my opinion on what you should do. I kissed her cheek and stepped outside. I handed Ron a beer and waited for him to start. David, Emma wants to meet before the divorce is final. She called me and asked me to ask you. I sighed, not surprised. I've thought about it. She's asked before. Why should I give her the satisfaction of easing her guilt? It won't change anything. Ron nodded. I get it. And if I were you, I probably wouldn't either. But let me ask you this. Do you have any unanswered questions? Anything you need closure on? If so, turn this around on her. Get your answers first, then do whatever you want. Walk out, stay and listen, whatever. But at least get what you need. His logic made sense. So, you didn't bring me out here to push me into giving her another chance? Hell no, David. I just want what's best for you. If that means going through with the divorce, then I'm behind you all the way. The night before the court date, I met Emma at a small cafe. We asked for a quiet table in the corner. Thanks for meeting me, she said softly. She looked like she was about to fall apart. It took everything in me not to reach across the table and take her hands in mine. But I didn't let her speak first. Emma, I know you have things you want to say, but I have a couple of questions first. Before she could answer, the waiter showed up, launching into his usual spiel about the specials. I cut him off politely. A bottle of wine and the chef's salad to split, please. And if possible, we'd like some privacy. He nodded in understanding and walked away. I turned back to Emma. First question, why? I thought we had something special. She lowered her head. We did, David. But my reasons are all the usual cliches. We'd been together for 7 years, exclusive that whole time. And then, a good-looking guy at work started paying me attention. He complimented me, made me feel special. And, well, you were either at work or thinking about work all the time. I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. That's not fair, Emma. You know I only put in those hours to get the promotion. The one that would have let you be a stay-at-home mom, just like you wanted. She nodded, blinking back tears. I know, David. I know. I knew it then, too. I had known all along. But at the time, I was too selfish, too caught up in wanting everything all at once. I can't believe I screwed it up so badly, Emma whispered, her voice breaking. We were less than a year away from starting our family. I even had names picked out. Tears streamed down her face, but I still resisted the urge to reach across the table and hold her hands. I took a deep breath. Okay, I promised myself I wouldn't ask this, but I have to know. Was he really that much better in bed than me? Emma's reaction caught me off guard. She actually laughed through her tears. No, David. Not even close. He couldn't hold a candle to you. I never had to fake it with you. She hadn't noticed the waiter approaching behind her when she said this. He set down our wine, took one look at me, then gave a knowing smirk before walking away. Emma turned bright red, and for the first time in 6 months, we actually laughed together. We finished our salads, sipped our wine, and Emma spent the rest of the evening trying to get me to accept her apology. I didn't. I told her maybe one day, but it was too raw, too soon. When we got up to leave, she dropped one final bomb on me. This is another reason I did what I did, David. You can be so detached. Our marriage ends tomorrow, and you're like a statue. No tears, no anger, nothing. I cry myself to sleep every night. Did you even love me? I turned to face her fully. Emma, I loved you more than you'll ever know. But let's get a couple of things straight. First, you keep referring to your actions. Let's call it what it really was. You cheated on me. You slept with another man when you were supposed to be faithful, forsaking all others. Second, whether I go home tonight and drink myself into a stupor or cry my eyes out is my business. And let's be real, Emma. After the divorce tomorrow, you and Tom will be a couple. He's already made it clear what he thinks of me by screwing my wife, ending my marriage, and laughing in my face while doing it. If I break down right now, if I admit to you how bad my nights have been, you'll tell him one day. And then that arrogant bastard will have one more laugh at my expense. So don't push me, Emma. You really don't want to see the demon that lurks just beneath the surface. I didn't go to court the next day. My attorney handled everything. It was a modern no-fault divorce, an equitable division of assets. Just like that, our marriage was over. Months passed. I used the time to rebuild. I did get that promotion, a hefty salary bump, a corner office, but I had no one to share it with. Nothing to spend it on. Maybe I spent too much time at work. One night over drinks, Ron introduced me to the r/cheating stories subreddit, where betrayed husbands shared their revenge tales. I read through hundreds of them, taking notes, ranking my favorite methods for payback. I wasn't interested in anything that would land me in jail, that ranked low. Psychological warfare? Now that was more my style. Then, Tom handed me the perfect opportunity. I had the misfortune of bumping into him one afternoon, completely by chance. At the time, I hadn't realized that after our divorce, he and Emma had actually started dating again. In fact, they were now engaged. And Tom, being the smug piece of garbage that he was, just had to rub it in. Well, David, looks like I won and you lost. Emma's a fantastic lay. I can't get enough of her. But I have to ask, what's wrong with your equipment, man? She was so damn easy to get into bed when you were married. I could have killed him. I didn't. I wasn't scared of Mr. Black Belt in karate, but I had just spent 2 years busting my ass for that promotion. A physical altercation would have flushed my career down the drain. This guy had already destroyed my marriage. Was I really going to let him ruin my professional life too? I clenched my fists, took a deep breath, and walked away. Call me a doormat if you want. It is what it is. But my revenge? That came to me out of nowhere. Funny thing about guys like Tom, they can't help but dip their pen in the company inkwell. And Tom was no exception. One day, I got a call from Anita Smith, a woman I'd met at one of the company holiday parties. She wanted to meet for dinner. Her treat? Anita had dated Tom before Emma, and from what she told me, their breakup happened right around the time Tom started chasing my wife. When Emma and I were fighting through our divorce, Tom and Anita had rekindled their relationship. But the moment my divorce was finalized and Tom officially claimed Emma, he tossed Helen aside like yesterday's trash. And Anita? Oh, she was pissed. And we all know what they say about a woman scorned. How could you let Tom steal your wife without so much as a fight? She demanded over dinner. I was at that holiday party last December. I saw how Tom acted. I was still in love with him, and I was hoping you'd fight for Emma. But you just walked away. Are you clueless, or just a coward? I leaned back in my chair, took a sip of my whiskey, and thought about how to respond. Anita, I don't know you well enough to trust you. And right now, trust is in short supply. But I can tell you this, I'm not a coward. And one day, there will be repercussions. Ever hear the saying, revenge is a dish best served cold? Anita studied me, a slow smirk spreading across her face. Damn, David, I didn't think you were Sicilian. I grinned. That's right. And if you really want revenge, just sit tight. One day, I'll call you and ask for a favor. Nothing illegal, but very, very important. That night, my plan started to take shape. I needed to know if I could trust Anita. I made some discreet inquiries, and my source confirmed her story. Tom had definitely dumped her for Emma, just as she said. My source also let me in on another juicy detail. Senior management at the company was getting sick of Tom's workplace romances. New policies were being written, and Tom was on thin ice. This was getting better by the minute. Meanwhile, I had been spending time with an escort I'd hired a few times over the past couple of months. We'd go to dinner or a show, have a few drinks, and then end up in bed for a couple of hours. It cost me a fortune, but at least I wasn't jumping into a rebound relationship. Escort also became a key piece of my plan. I called Anita and told her if she was in. She had 2 tasks. Give me Emma's work travel schedule. And second at the right time, ask Tom to meet her for drinks, just for closure. Anita called me back the next day. Emma would be out of town in 2 weeks, for 3 full days. The trap was set. Anita reached out to Tom and invited him to meet at the downtown hotel lounge on the first night of Emma's trip. Just drinks. Just talking. But knowing Tom, he was definitely hoping for one last night with Anita. And an escort? She had the most important role of all. I explained the first part of the plan to her, and she laughed. Then I hit her with part 2. and her jaw dropped. I asked the escort, her name Lisa, "Do any of the girls in your line of work ever catch something?" "Nothing deadly, just something inconvenient." She raised an eyebrow. "You're serious?" I nodded. "Nothing life-threatening, just something to ruin his wedding night." And just like that, the pieces started falling into place. "I can handle two," she teased, swirling the olive in her martini. "But don't try to get me drunk. I've been on the road for 2 weeks, haven't seen my husband in all that time." A girl starts to get a little restless. She flashed the cheap wedding band I had bought at a pawn shop for this occasion, and it worked like a charm. It was like waving a red flag in front of a bull. Ted took the bait instantly. "My name's Tom. It's a pleasure to meet you," he said, his smirk practically dripping with arrogance. They chatted over drinks for about half an hour. Lisa let him buy her that third cocktail, deliberately acting just tipsy enough to lower his guard. By the time she was finishing her Cosmo, Tom was in full seduction mode. Light touches on her arm, his knee brushing against hers, smooth talking with just enough sexual innuendo to keep the tension rising. Lisa later told me it was hard not to laugh at how much effort he was putting in, considering he was essentially paying for what he thought he was conquering. Eventually, she decided she'd had enough of his act. Finishing her drink, she leaned in and murmured, "Why don't we take this upstairs?" Tom didn't hesitate. They went up to her hotel room and slept together. Twice. Of course, Tom had no idea that the entire encounter was being photographed. Afterward, Lisa played her role perfectly, kicking him out under the excuse that she needed to rest, but not before getting his cell number. That night, Lisa and I sat in front of my laptop, reviewing the photos. As promised, I deleted any shots where she could be identified before the memory card ever left the room. Even after that, we still had dozens of clear images showing Tom, completely naked, screwing a stranger. We had all the evidence we needed. A month passed, and I was waiting for one final piece to fall into place. 2 weeks before Tom and Emma's wedding, Lisa called me with some very interesting news. "One of the girls is sick," she told me. "Gonorrhea." I only found out because she asked me and another girl to cover for her while she gets treatment. My pulse quickened. "Did you mention my request?" "Briefly," Lisa admitted. "She's willing to talk, but fair warning, she's a mercenary. She'll probably charge you double, knowing how hard it'll be to find a replacement." I let out a low chuckle. "What about your rate? Does that change?" "Nah," Lisa said. "We have a deal, and you always take care of me." That was true. I had always tipped her extra. So, we met up with the mystery girl, no name, no questions asked. We worked out the details for phase 2 of the plan. It was going to cost me a few grand, but it was worth every penny. The next day, Lisa called Tom. "Hey, Tom, dear, it's Lisa from the Hyatt. Remember me?" "How could I forget?" he said, practically oozing confidence. "Are you in town?" "I am," she purred. "And I was wondering, are you up for the ride of your lifetime?" Tom chuckled. "Pretty full of yourself, huh? We had fun that night, but what are you willing to do to make this the ride of my lifetime?" Lisa giggled. "I'm here with a coworker. She's a wild one. After hearing all about you, she thought you might be able to handle us both. Think you can sneak away?" Tom didn't even pretend to hesitate. "Of course. Just need to make a quick call, then I'll be there." "Not the lounge," Lisa instructed. "Come straight up to room 111. We'll be waiting. And bring some chilled Stoli." Tom arrived at room 111, expecting 2 women. Instead, he found only one. Our mystery girl. "Where's Lisa?" he asked, frowning. "Had to run," she said with a sigh. "Her kid got sick, and she had to walk her husband through what to do. First-time dad, apparently." Tom relaxed a little. "So, just you and me then?" "Looks like it," she said, flashing a sultry smile. And that was enough for Tom. They slept together that night. When he left around 10 p.m., she met me and Lisa at a local coffee shop to collect her payment. I won't lie. I felt a tiny pang of guilt for what we had just done. But then I thought about all the arrogant, smug bullshit Tom had pulled over the last year, and suddenly, I didn't feel so bad. As she pocketed the envelope, the mystery girl smirked. "Told you I was a mercenary." Lisa turned to me, amused. "Well, you've paid me for the night." Want to go back to your place and screw? I shrugged. Why not? And we did. I waited until the week after the wedding to finish my project. Both Emma and Tom's company received mysterious envelopes in the mail, sent from fake return addresses. Emma's letter read, "Dear Mrs. Emma, sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but it seems your husband and my wife were seeing each other when she was traveling to your city. The private investigator I hired provided me with these photos. I've only included the ones showing his face, so there's no doubt it's him. I wasn't going to tell you until I got a call from my doctor. It turns out she passed something on to me. You might want to get tested. Signed, the soon-to-be ex-husband of your husband's mistress." The CEO's letter was even simpler. "Dear sir, just thought you should know what kind of man your company employs. According to my wife, he picked her up at a bar, got her drunk, and then gave her an STD. I don't know if this letter will reach you, or if you even care, but I'd keep an eye on him. Seems like the kind of guy with no morals. Signed, one sorry husband." Everything unraveled from there. Emma's family forced an annulment. Tom got fired, and from what I heard, they both ended up on medication. Helps to have a friend in the county health department. As for me, I moved on. Sometimes, I imagined alternate endings. In one version, I beat the living crap out of Tom. In another, I pretended to take Emma back, took her on a trip to a foreign country, then left her stranded there with no passport, no credit cards, nothing. But I couldn't do it. Not because Emma didn't deserve it. She did. But because of her mother. I might have been willing to be cruel to my ex-wife, but I couldn't bring myself to hurt the woman who had once been like a second mom to me. Eventually, I just lost interest. My new job was keeping me challenged and engaged, and for the first time in a while, life was good. That is, until the next Simmons family picnic. My uncle was there. My father's older brother. An uncle was connected, if you catch my drift. He called me over and lowered his voice. "David, tell me about your divorce. What happened?" "I like that girl," Uncle said with a grin, taking a slow sip of his drink. I gave him the Reader's Digest version of my breakup with Emma. Just the highlights, no unnecessary details. When I finished, he leaned in slightly. "And what did you do about it?" So, I told him. I walked him through every step of my revenge, from the photos to the letters, all the way to Tom's downfall. Uncle chuckled, shaking his head. "That's wicked, kid, but not exactly scorched earth." I smirked. "No, Uncle. I did my best to put it behind me. I took the high road." "That's good," he said with a nod. "And those are great reasons." He paused, eyeing me thoughtfully. "You know, that old baseball coach of yours really did you a favor." Uncle wasn't the type to get sentimental, but he always found it amusing that a black man from the Chicago slums had just as much influence on my life as my own father. "If you'd taken after that hot-headed dad of yours," he mused, "you wouldn't be the man you are today. There were plenty of times I had to calm your baby brother down before he got himself killed or locked up." I nodded, because he wasn't wrong. Then, out of nowhere, he asked, "You ever talk to Coach?" I hesitated. "A few times. Not since junior year of college, though." "You should look him up," Uncle said. "He volunteers at the Boys and Girls Club down on West Palmer. Let him know what he did for you. A man likes to hear that once in a while." I promised I would. Then he patted me on the back and added, "But right now, walk over to your father, give him a hug, and tell him you love him. He needs to hear that too." That was Uncle for you. Some people feared him, whispered stories about his connections, his reputation. But to me, he was a giant teddy bear in a sharp suit. I did go visit Coach, and before I knew it, I found myself volunteering at the club. Eventually, I even started dating his niece, a beautiful woman, smart, kind-hearted. But that's another story. No drama, no revenge, just love. Then, on my birthday, I received a simple card from Uncle. It read, "Happy birthday, nephew." Nobody laughs at a Simmons. That was it. No signature, no explanation. But later that night, I got a call. Apparently, a certain Tom had been found in an alley behind his favorite bar, the victim of a mugging. Nothing life-threatening, but a broken nose, a few busted ribs and fingers, and two very, very swollen testicles. Looks like his black belt didn't save him that night. Dear listener, if you've made it this far, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. It really helps. And remember, revenge is a dish best served cold.